A talk show that cuts to the truth, no matter how painful it might be, and no BS. Citizen Smith, Citizen Smith, Citizen Smith.
Here's a man who would not take it anymore. A man who stood up against the scum, the dogs, the filth. Here is someone who stood up.
It's time for Citizen Smith.
I laugh every time I hear that intro. Stood up against the scum.
Yeah.
Well, you try to stand up for the truth here at Citizen Smith weekdays, 9 to 9:30 on the Pacific Coast in the beautiful Rose City of Portland, Oregon. Heard the captain talking about the police force getting strict with the shutdown of streets for the drag racers, and it's a hazard to the public. And they're going to fine them $500.
Oh.
With up to and in jail for 30 days.
Oh.
I was thinking $500 for shutting down a street and driving recklessly.
Not enough.
Should be like $5,000. They'll sneeze at 500. It'd be worth it. They're betting on each other to who wins what, right? There's gambling going on out there, I bet, for these races.
Pink slips, baby. Pink slips.
I can't believe it's even an issue you have to address. I can't believe it goes on this long without anybody jumping in and saying, hey, we're the state troopers. Damn, I figured they'd be out there, break it up, everybody. Get the hell out. Who started this? You're going to jail. Can't shut down bridges and roads. It's unheard of in this day and age, except in Portland. Wow, huh? How bad can things get when you're like, yeah, we're going to do something about this. They shut down the bridge the other day, and we're drag racing. We broke it up eventually, but not until 3 hours of racing was over.
Maybe the cops are betting too. Who knows?
Over the weekend, I was sitting next to a guy at the bar at the sports bar watching the Riders Cup and the Red Sox lose to the Yankees. And my teams are all losing. New England Patriots lost. I'm a little bummed out today. It's been a bad weekend for New England sports fans. The Yankees hit a grand. I was talking to the guy, right? We're winning 2-1. It's the ninth inning or bottom of the eighth, top of the eighth because they're at Fenway.
Yeah.
The Yankees are at bat. And there's 2 outs, and we're up 2-1. The guy's striking out. So I'm talking to him. Then the next thing I know, it's ninth inning, and they're up 5-2. I was like, what the hell just happened? They hit a grand slam to go ahead 5-2 while I was talking to the guy. Because he was intriguing me with our conversation, which he's a fisherman, big fisherman. He's a roadie. He goes around the country building stages for rock concerts. And then he comes back to Portland. Loves to fish.
But the last year and a half has been tough for roadies, right?
I didn't get into it with him. So he mentioned about his fishing, and I was like, what about the Willamette? You fished the Willamette at all? He's like, oh, yeah, sure. Columbia, Willamette, sturgeon.
That's big here.
I didn't know there was sturgeon in the Willamette River in Columbia. These suckers can live for 100 years.
Unless you catch them.
And they're massive, and they're beautiful, and they're native species to Oregon, because I looked it up afterwards. Sturgeon in the Willamette River. He says, yeah, you can go down to this spot and catch them. And he goes, they got catch and release, but sometimes they'll let you keep them certain times a year for a harvest. They are an endangered species, though, from what I understand. They are threatened. You know why? This came out in the conversation.
Why?
Poaching.
Poaching.
For their caviar,
which
you can get like $2,000 for an ounce.
It's like real expensive caviar.
So I looked it up online, and I saw stories from like 2005, but I haven't seen anything of late. What's the state of the poaching today of the sturgeon? He said it's ongoing. Particularly Russians, they like to get them and export them to Russia.
Interesting.
That's what he said. So I wanted to try to find out more about this poaching of sturgeons for the caviar. So they'll take the big female, gut it, take her eggs, which are critical for the survival of the fish, and keep it as the caviar and just discard the carcass. And that's how you know it happened after the fact. Yeah, we just can't leave things alone in the environment, right? Everything's got to be taken for its money value. I hear that and I just get distraught. How do you combat that? I mean, they can catch these fish anywhere. Can't be everywhere watching. So I was wondering what the state of the poor sturgeon is in the waters of Columbia and the Willamette River. But that got me thinking about fishing. I haven't been out there fishing. I got my rod and reel ready to rock and roll. I'm gonna start fishing. By the way, sturgeon fishing is best in the fall and the spring when the water gets cooler. That'd be an exciting thing to actually catch one of those things and see it and hold it and then, release it back into the water. Hopefully you don't make them too fatigued. You don't want to drain them of their energy and life. They have to fly. They come in from the ocean. They're anadromous.
There's some sturgeon regulations here. Bonneville Dam to the Dallas Dam, sturgeon must be between 38 inches minimum and 54-inch in length.
He said that to me, and that's not a big fish. So they allow you to take the fish that aren't that big.
It says only catch and release allowed for sturgeon from McNary Dam to the Oregon-Washington border.
The big ones you can't even catch. They want you to leave those alone. Like I said, they can live for 100 years. They can be massive, 40 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
These are big. They're like this. Gorgeous fish. They're like one of the oldest fish species in the world. They're like from the dinosaurs, and they look like it. So, interesting. I'm learning, bit by bit, I learn about Oregon and especially its wildlife and fish. I'm starting to learn. I was talking about, okay, there are cougars in the state, right? And it's like, sure, yeah, there's thousands of them. Well, I looked that up and I saw there's cougars, mountain lions, they're all the same species, different subspecies. But so the cougars in Oregon, I read were about, I think I read 2,000 the population, but that's, they're out there. But you don't read about them, and you don't see any encounters that I've read about since I've been here for 6 months. But something to consider when you're hiking in the backwoods. Then we're talking about the elk and the deer. And he's like, oh, the deer aren't like New England here. There's more elk than there is deer. Well, of course, I looked that up, and now that is not true. There's roughly like 6,000 elk, and there's like 500,000 deer.
I mean, deers sometimes are
In
the size
Oregon.
of dogs, They're sometimes pretty small. So.
You have the white-tailed, the black-tailed, and the mule deer populations in Oregon. So, getting up to speed on all the species of this grand state. It's a lot of wilderness in Oregon. So it can sustain these species quite well, these populations. And black bear population is pretty good too here. I think I read 25,000 black bear population, Oregon. Again, he was like, oh, they're brown. I'm like, they're not brown bears. Brown bears are grizzly bears, and grizzly bears are interior, and brown bears are coastal bears. He says, oh, they're brown. They're black, but they can be brown in color or blonde. But let's separate that. There is no grizzly and brown bear grizzlies in Oregon. Yeah. The last one was killed like in 1920s sometime.
Oh my God.
1926, I think they said her. The last grizzly was killed in Oregon. Sad to hear that. Yeah. And then lastly, of the animals and wild animals, wolves are also in Oregon. There's like 22 packs, population about 178. It's called 200. Maybe they missed a few. Not bad. I didn't realize there was a wolf population in Oregon, but where there's deer, you're going to find wolves. So somehow they got into, I don't know if they were relocated here and then built the population base up, or they migrated from other areas. Again, I would like to investigate. We were saying one wolf can kill 2 deer a week to eat. He's like, yeah, they're wiping out the deer population. I'm like,
Keeping it under control is what they're doing.
yeah. I mean, what do you mean? See, again, people make things up though, right?
Yep. Yeah.
There's not many deer. There's 500,000. There's plenty for these wolves to feed on. So you get these guys are the outdoorsmen too, but they're still getting their facts wrong until you look into it. Everybody wants to attack the wolves and why are they're bad. No, they keep, as you mentioned, they keep populations in check. They're a natural part of the ecology. It's good to have wolves. It's a privilege. And that's my update on the Oregon species. That leads me into my topic that I wanted to bring up. This is a cute little story. Katmai National Park and Preserve in Alaska, where I actually lived for a summer and worked, not in Katmai National Park, but in King Salmon, which is nearby. And you take the Naknek River up on a jet boat that we had at this lodge that I was a bartender at, and you go to Katmai National Park, and it's a great area for fishing for rainbow trout, salmon. They have the world-class rainbow trout. They get up to 40, 50 pounds, 60 pounds, massive catch and release. And that's where the bears feed on the falls, which you can watch from an observatory deck. And you walk through the trails, through the woods to the observatory decks at the falls, Brooks Falls. And that's where they're all sitting around grabbing the salmon as they come up and leaping up the falls, and they catch them in the air. And you've probably seen these photos. Really great thing to see. One of the most spectacular things I've ever seen in my life. Used to go there like every weekend. You could just grab a seat on the jet boat and head up there. But these bears are massive. I remember one bear. I was walking through the woods just by myself. Well, there was a few other people, I think, around me. And there was a park ranger just watching on a bear from his, and he was on his knees watching. I said, what are you looking at? Shh. He's looking at a bear that was massive, like a big, fat old bear. And it was sleeping in the woods.
Wow.
I've never seen a brown bear sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
And this sucker was on his side and there's just breathing. I don't know if the bear was sick or, maybe even dying because it was an old bear, but he was really concerned about it. And there was a famous bear back then they called Diver, and it might have been him. This is it was the oldest bear. And this bear was so massive and you wonder why it was sleeping in the middle of the day right there. So, but you would see bears all over the place. I caught a salmon on the boat while it was docked on the beach, anchored on the beach, and I was fishing off the back of the jet boat, and I caught a salmon. And as I was reeling it in, this friggin' bear comes swimming down the lake towards the boat, and it started swimming around the base of the boat, waiting for me to pull that salmon in so it could grab. So I had the salmon bringing it into the boat, and the bear was just looking up at the fish, waiting for it to either fall off the hook and it was like one of the more interesting experiences I ever had with a brown bear.
They're pretty scary.
You don't think of them. Yeah, I was safe in this boat because it was high enough that the bear couldn't get up in the boat. It was a high, but it was interesting. You never think of bears swimming to find their fish, but they do around there, and they get fat.
Oh, they get so fat.
They bulk up to like 1,400 pounds. The largest bears in the world are around Brooks Falls, feeding on salmon. So they have this thing going on there where they have a
Fat Bear Week. It's awesome.
Competition to crown the fattest bear at the end of each season.
Yep. And
they have it on cameras too, the bears at the falls.
Yeah.
So you can see them, and then you have to pick your bear. They are all numbered. Bear 480, Otis, believed to be around 26 years old.
Yeah, I saw him.
Won the crown 3 times. A male known as 747 won in 2020.
He's a big fatty too.
Well,
the bracket reveal is today at 4:00. So they're going to tell us the bears that are involved in Fat Bear Week, which is kind of cool. So the Fat Bear Week bracket reveal is this afternoon at 4:00.
Oh, so this is very timely.
Yeah, very.
Well, it's right near the end of the season when the salmon stop running,
A
and
big bear.
they start hunkering down for their dens right now.
I put a big fat bear up there.
Yeah. So last month, 747 beer, number 747,
Yeah.
a massive chestnut brown beer that weighed 1,400 pounds at his peak. He's one of the favorites.
I was trying to find his picture.
You really?
Yeah. Here.
There's approximately 2,200 brown bears at Katmai National Park.
That's a lot of brown bears.
Last year, rangers identified 90 individual bears at Brook Falls, not including the cubs. And they also have
Wow.
cutest cub.
Yeah, they have
rating.
Junior Fat Bear Week, Cub Week. So here's Bear 747.
Oh, you got a picture.
He is one big fat bear. The 2020 Fat Bear Week winner, 747. Yeah, he is fat.
We're going to show it on the screen? All right.
Yeah, it's on the screen.
An adult male might gain 300 to 400 pounds over a season eating these salmon.
There he is. You can see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's fat.
Well, that is a big fat bear.
He is
Number
fat.
7 foot. He's old too.
Yeah, he's fat.
That's all they do, man. They eat salmon, they get fat, and then they go sleep.
It's pretty funny.
That's their life. And then when they eventually, the biggest bear finds a female, mates, and then goes back to eating salmon.
Let's look at that guy again. He is just fat. I mean, I have seen some big ass bears. I mean, I've been to Admiralty Island, where there's more bears than people. And
Yeah.
This guy is fat. Wow. All right, good on you at 747.
At the peak of the salmon run at Brooks Falls, these bears can gain 2 to 4 pounds in a day. One sockeye salmon can contain 2,500 to 6,000 calories. By the time they enter the den for hibernation, that a cub could go from like 6 pounds at birth to 80 pounds. And then eventually these suckers grow to 1,400 pounds. They 26 years old to 30 years of age. That's like the maximum.
Yeah, they don't.
But they get to grow old there because there's no hunting.
Right.
So they can live out their life like they should in the natural world. And it's a great area because there's so much salmon coming up the Naknek River and Kings to the Brooks Falls are just loaded. So they're well taken care of there, and it's conservation efforts at its best. Because when you get to the hunting areas, one thing a hunting guide told me once from Seward, that you don't see a lot of old bears because the hunters go for the biggest, oldest bears for trophies.
The big fatties.
So they've culled a lot of them from the population base, which is not a good thing. So that's a bit of a concern. I don't know if they've addressed it. I bet you with the pandemic, there's less travel to Alaska. So you probably saw some bears that, got a break.
Yeah.
Didn't get shot and killed this year because there was nobody around to kill them.
If anybody wants to follow Fat Bear Week, you can go to the website that I'm flashing on the screen right now. It's katmaiconservancy.org/fat.bearweek2021.
Yes, and I was relying on a wonderful little story done by Angela Owens of the Wall Street Journal, who covered the. I didn't know this was even going on.
Big fat bears.
Yep.
It's been going on for a while. It's fun to watch, though.
Yeah. Brings back my memories of living there.
Yeah, it's so much easier, peaceful, no drag racing, no.
Yeah. The only thing you have to worry about is brown bears. Those are your hazard. And I got a great story. So I worked in king salmon, and on the other side of the road, which is like 14 miles away, is Bristol Bay. And that's where Naknek is. And that's where all the fishing boats go out to the Johnson Line, which is the border of where you can go as far as you can go to the Johnson Line to catch your salmon for the Bristol Bay fishery. And so there's the bars in the area, even though there's not a lot. They bring in acts from all over the country to play live music because everybody's flush with money. The commercial fishermen come in with thousands of dollars. Then you've got the fish processors who are making their money. Then you've got us working in the bars and restaurants. I was making like $1,000 a week in tips, and then they paid for my accommodations, cash in my pocket. We all opened up our bank accounts with like $50.
Yeah.
And by the end of the summer, you got $10,000 in cash sitting in the bank account.
Great.
And this is the money we saved, not to mention the money we spent on booze and food. So one day we all get in a van. There's these vans that taxi you back and forth between Naknek and King Salmon, and it's fun to go down to Naknek because it's a really thriving area because all the fishermen come in, and it's just a fun place. And there's a limousine pulls up at the one of the bars, and a Russian gal comes out, like 21 years old, out of a limousine, brand new limousine because the Russians have some processing plants there. They're very much involved. And she came from a wealthy Russian family, and she walked into the bar, and all of us, she was gorgeous,
What?
and she was dressed to the hill and rich and in a limousine in the middle of the wilderness. These are kind of the crazy things you see. Then we get in the van like at 2 a.m, right, to go back. And there's a whole bunch of us in the van, like 10 people. We're driving up the road, and this guy who's had a few too many is walking down the side of the road because there's no sidewalks. So as we pass him, about a quarter mile up the road, there's a massive brown bear walking down the side of the road towards this guy. So the woman in the taxi calls into a taxi down in Naknek. Hey, we might have a situation developing here. There's a big brown bear walking towards a drunk guy on the side of the road. Somebody might want to go by and pick him up real quick. That's the kind of crazy stuff we saw there. Just one hell of a summer, I'll tell you. When I took a break from media work, this was in 2000, summer of 2000.
Fun.
I had started the newspaper and took a break after 2 years of busting my ass with my business partner to just get away and do something different before I left the state. And that was really a highlight of my Alaska experiences.
Good times.
Yeah. Love it. So when I see these stories about the bears, I'm like, I had the privilege to just visit Brooks Falls every weekend whenever I wanted to.
Yeah, that's awesome. I used to have friends in Juneau that worked with several plane companies. We'd go to those islands, Admiralty Island, Taku Glacier, all those cool places. Bears are just so
mystical.
Yeah, they're just weird. I mean, I've run into 1,000 moose, in my day, and they're big and mystical as well, but they're also kind of mean,
Yeah.
But bears are they're not really mean. They're just like curious.
Well,
and if you smell good, they want to eat you.
They can be mean.
Yeah. Just ask Timothy Treadwell.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I had a neighbor in Bird Creek where I lived, just south of Anchorage, right? We're on the Chugach State Park border there. And she went and ran. She always just liked to jog down the main trail that also ATVs use. So there's a wide trail. She's jogging down there with her earbuds in, not playing music while she's jogging. She's a woman who's lived there for 30 years, right?
Yeah, you would think.
She ran into a sow with 2 cubs, and they attacked her and knocked her down and bit her up, and she survived. But you don't say they're not dangerous. A sow with 2 cubs is as dangerous as they come.
Anytime you see a bear with cubs, it's bad news.
The thing is, she surprised them.
Yeah.
And that's the worst scenario.
I've had a few encounters in Juneau area hiking with bears. Black bears, I've walked right past them, didn't even acknowledge them. But I've had a couple goldies pop up in the middle of the trail, and I just turned around and went back the other way.
Right. Then there was a gentleman, young guy in Girdwood who wrote a book about this after the fact, but he would go down. He was going to fish for salmon down in Cooper Landing.
Yeah.
And he surprised a female with cubs.
Whoops.
One swat across the face, and he was blind for the rest of his life. Ugh. Survived the attack, but lost his eyesight.
Ouch.
So these happen usually once every few years, these crazy encounters. But they are dangerous when you surprise them, a sow and cubs. That's the most dangerous scenario.
What's a famous Saturday Night Live sketch when Dan Aykroyd plays the author who wrote the book Mauled? And she asks him, do you have any advice? And he puts the marshmallow in his mouth and says, never feed a bear like this. And he puts the marshmallow in his mouth and leans in. Classic.
Yeah. Thank you for that story. Okay. What was that from?
Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
Dan Aykroyd.
Wow, you're going back a ways with that one.
Well, I think about that every time someone talks about Treadwell.
I remember that.
Bears.
Now I
like,
remember
okay,
that. I remember that little skit.
Yeah.
That was funny.
It's all shredded.
Alaska bear stories, right? Don't we love to share them?
Oh, they're good. They're horrible, but good.
Yeah. All right. Finishing out my environmental talk for today. I read this wonderful story. I loved it. So during the pandemic, the lack of people, like in city parks and state parks, for example, especially city parks, led to wildlife having room to be wild and not have any people around to interfere with them. And this was very much the case in 2020 for birds. From hummingbirds, eagles across North America, urban areas were frenetic with flocks of birds. Since people were in lockdown for the COVID-19 pandemic, a new study based on millions of observations by amateur birdwatchers shows that the population of dozens of bird species rose significantly around city centers, major roads, and airports as a response to the lull in human activity. This again, I rely on the Wall Street Journal here. Robert Lee Hotz wrote this. I thought this was great. I was wondering about this because we have a real impact on wildlife and birds especially, and they really thrive during the lack of people bothering them. Some species were as much as 14 times more numerous during the lockdowns than before the pandemic restrictions were imposed. Quote, I am shocked at the fact we saw so many changes in bird behavior, said Nicola Coper, a conservation scientist at the university and senior author of the study of this. All birds are way more sensitive to human disturbance than we had really realized. Once we reduced traffic, we got almost immediate movement of birds into these landscapes based on 4.3 million observations by thousands of birders.
Hello, little birdie.
20 billion birds live and migrate in North America every year.
A lot of bird shit.
But they face a gauntlet of human activity and hazards. One thing I think we could all take from this is that let's be kinder to our environment and to the animals we share the planet with, right? Let's allow them open space more. But do you think we will? Will we go right back to this way we lived before? How do you make more room for wildlife in a city urban environment? You get a lot of parks in Portland, which I love. They're small, some of them are large. I walked by one yesterday, right up the road here, Oregon Park, I think they call it, and
I don't know.
Oregon City Park. Anyway, it was a nice open, it was just great to see people spaced out, relaxing. There's a little basketball court they're playing, and there's some people sitting down reading books. Beautiful old cypress trees. And what's the other big beautiful tree that grows? Do you see those really large old growth cypress and help me out here. Come on, you've been here long enough. The other tree that's big and beautiful in
evergreens?
Oregon. No. It's the
I don't know.
Well, cypress is one of the big beauties. They got some big old trees in the parks around here that are just grand to look at. I don't know. As a new person to the city and the state, I look at these things when I'm walking around. I'm like, wow, that is one big old beautiful tree. Because you don't see those in Boston. You know, you don't see old growth trees in the parks around Boston. They're all planted over the last 50 or 100 years, but they're not natural trees that have been here for hundreds of years. And you see them in these beautiful parks in Oregon, and Douglas fir. That's the other one I was thinking of. That is one of the beauties, the big beauties you can see here. And I just love it. It's one of the things we have that makes a city and state wonderful is the combination of preserving some of the old growth forest within the parks in the city. But one thing I haven't noticed, though, as I was thinking about this, walking around, I haven't seen too many birds flying around the city. They kind of stay out. There's been too much building and human activity. We've driven quite a bit, I bet, of the bird species out of the city of
Well, you can ask that pigeon that shit on me not too long ago when I was walking down Grand.
You really got shit on?
Yeah, goddamn pigeon. Shit right on me.
That is a riot.
I felt like going and getting like a McChicken and eating it right in front of me.
Well, thank you for that addition to the conversation of birding today, Justin McDonald. Well, that does it
Goddamn
for today's
bird.
show. Little environmental talk. Got away from the politics.
I just want to remind people again, Fat Bear Week. You got to check it out. That catmyconservancy.org website. That it's fun to watch and fun to keep track of. So
Yes, thank you. We will watch it. They have the cameras set up at the falls 24/7, so you can also see the activity of the bears. A lot of people don't know they can do that. I'm hoping we get them to look at that. This is Citizen Smith. Thank you for joining me today. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.